In the township of North Whitehall, Pennsylvania, a brutal act of violence shattered the peace over 3 decades ago. Rose Hnath, a beloved 78-year-old widow, was found viciously stabbed and beaten in her ransacked home. The chilling discovery made by her nephew when she failed to appear at church left investigators and her family grappling with unanswered questions. Now, with the progress of groundbreaking DNA technology, new light has been shed on this cold case and has led to an arrest. Rose Hnath was born in the early 1910s in the Lehigh Valley area of Pennsylvania. Raised in a modest family, Rose's early years were marked by the values of hard work, faith, and community. She grew up during a time of drastic change in America, witnessing the Great Depression and World War II, times that would instill in her a sense of resilience and determination. Rose would meet her husband, Michael Hnath, in the late 1930s. The couple married and settled in North Whitehall Township, where they built a life together. Michael worked in various local industries, while Rose found employment at the D&D shirt factory, a well-known local business that provided steady work for many in the community. Rose dedicated several decades of her life to the factory, where she was known for her strong work ethic and friendly demeanor. Despite not having children of their own, Rose and Michael were deeply connected to their extended family. Rose took great joy in being an aunt and great-aunt, often spending time with the children in her family. As a devoted Catholic, Rose was an active member of St. John the Baptist Church in Northampton. She attended Mass regularly and participated in various church activities. Her faith was a cornerstone of her life, providing her with a strong sense of purpose and community. Rose was known to be generous with her time, often volunteering for church events and helping those in need. After retiring from the D&D shirt factory, Rose continued to lead a fulfilling life. She enjoyed gardening, cooking, and spending time with her friends and family. Her home, nestled along the banks of the Lehigh River, was a peaceful retreat, and while she seemed to have a very quiet lifestyle, Rose remained vigilant and active. Her home was filled with cherished memories and mementos of her life with Michael, who had passed away a few years before her own life would come to an end in one of the most unimaginable and horrific ways. January 21, 1989 began like any other for Rose. Despite the recent burglary at her home just after Christmas, Rose maintained her routine, leaning on her faith and family for comfort. That morning, Rose did not appear at St. John the Baptist Church for her regular Sunday service. Known for her unwavering commitment to her faith, Rose's absence was immediately noticeable. Concerned, her family decided to check on her well-being. Her nephew, who often looked out for her, went to her home to ensure she was safe. Upon entering the house, Rose's nephew was faced with a horrifying scene that would forever be etched in his memory. The normally tidy living room was in disarray, indicating a struggle had taken place. Bloodstains covered various surfaces, and the room had been ransacked. It was clear that Rose had fought valiantly against her attacker. Tragically, Rose was found lifeless, having been subjected to a brutal and violent assault. She had been stabbed 28 times and bludgeoned, suffering multiple blunt force injuries. Her body bore the signs of defensive wounds, suggesting she had tried to fend off her assailant with every ounce of her strength. One of the weapons used in the attack, a knife, was found discarded outside the home, hinting that the perpetrator was hasty in fleeing the scene. As news of Rose's tragic demise spread, the community was plunged into mourning. Friends, neighbors, and fellow churchgoers were stunned by the senseless act of violence that had claimed the life of a beloved member of their community. The initial response from the Pennsylvania State Police and the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office was quick. Detectives, including Robert Devers and Thomas McAndrew, arrived at the crime scene to begin their investigation. The brutality of the crime shocked the seasoned investigators, who immediately realized the severity of the case. Inside Rose's home, detectives meticulously collected evidence, hoping to find any clue that could lead them to the perpetrator. The ransacked nature of the home suggested a burglary, yet the excessive violence indicated a deeper motive. Any physical evidence that might yield clues to who was behind Rose's end was collected from the scene. Items of particular interest included the knife found outside, a pellet gun, also believed to have been used in the attack, and various objects inside the home that might have the unknown assailant's DNA. At the time, DNA technology was in its infancy, but the investigators preserved all potential evidence with the foresight that future advancements might unlock critical information. Blood samples, fibers, and other trace evidence were carefully cataloged and stored for further analysis. Investigators conducted extensive interviews with Rose's family, friends, and neighbors. They looked into her routine, any recent changes in her life, or potential conflicts and threats she might have faced. The burglary just after Christmas was a significant point of interest, and detectives worked to determine if there was a connection between that incident and her violent demise. Initially, several theories emerged. The previous burglary suggested that Rose's home might have been targeted specifically, possibly by someone who knew her or was familiar with her routines. The excessive violence raised the possibility of a personal vendetta or a crime of passion, but without concrete evidence or witnesses, the theories remained speculative. Rose's funeral was a somber event, with those who had known her full of grief and disbelief. Her open casket displaying the terror-stricken expression she wore in her final moments. It was a heartbreaking sight that some family members could not bear to witness, choosing not to attend. The investigation faced challenges, and while leads were followed and persons of interest were questioned, no definitive connections could be made. As weeks turned into months, the case began to lose momentum, and the lack of new leads and inability to connect the evidence to a specific individual caused the investigation to come to a standstill. Throughout the years, investigators stayed committed to solving Rose's case, and 33 years after Rose's horrifying end, that dedication would finally pay off. In 2018, the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office and the Pennsylvania State Police decided to re-examine the evidence from Rose Hnath's case using the new DNA techniques. Detectives collaborated with forensic experts to analyze the evidence, focusing particularly on items that might contain touch DNA. Touch DNA analysis allowed forensic scientists to extract genetic material from surfaces that had been touched or handled by the perpetrator. The knife and the pellet gun found near Rose's home, as well as other items from the crime scene, were re-examined. Using this technology, scientists were able to obtain DNA profiles from the collected evidence. Those profiles were then compared against databases of known offenders. The breakthrough came when a DNA profile from the crime scene matched that of Michael Breisch, a name previously unknown in connection with the case. At the time of Rose Hnath's slaying, Breisch had been living in a community corrections facility in Allentown, Pennsylvania, not far from North Whitehall Township. He was 30 years old at the time of the crime and had a criminal history that included burglary and other offenses. Investigators began to piece together Breich's movements and actions around the time of the crime. They discovered that just 10 days after Rose's violent end, Breich had been arrested for escaping from the community corrections facility where he was supposed to be living. This information, combined with the DNA evidence, provided a compelling link to the crime. It was also revealed that Breich had no known personal connection to Rose, which meant that the attack had likely been opportunistic rather than targeted. In May 2024, armed with the new evidence, authorities located 65-year-old Michael Breich living in Coshocton County, Ohio. He had moved there after spending several years in Pennsylvania. Local law enforcement, in coordination with Pennsylvania authorities, apprehended Breich and charged him with the slaying of Rose Hnath. Breich was extradited to Pennsylvania, where he faced charges including criminal fatal violence, burglary, robbery, and other related offenses. He is being held without bail at the Lehigh County Jail. The arrest of Michael Breich has brought a sense of relief and closure to Rose Hnath's family and the North Whitehall Township community. For over 3 decades, they had lived with the anguish of not knowing who had ended Rose's life. The diligent work of investigators, combined with advancements in DNA technology, had finally provided the answers they sought. Now, as Breich awaits his day in court, the family is one step closer to finding justice. In the streets of West Valley City, Utah, a heinous crime remained unsolved for 3 decades. Lisa Redmond, a devoted mother and diligent Pizza Hut delivery driver, met a tragic fate one fateful night in 1996. Found slain in her uniform on a deserted roadside, the circumstances surrounding her demise puzzled investigators for years. With leads scarce and the trail gone cold, the case seemed destined to fade into obscurity, until a breakthrough in forensic technology. Lisa Redmond lived in West Valley City, Utah, where she grew up with a strong sense of community and family values. After serving in the U.S. Army, Lisa married James Redmond in 1987, and together they built a life centered around their 2 children, Megan and Nathan. Lisa worked night shifts to support her family, balancing her role as a Pizza Hut delivery driver with volunteering at a local school, where she dedicated her time to teaching children how to read. Her compassion, work ethic, and devotion to her family would leave a lasting impression on those that knew her. No one could have predicted the tragedy that would soon follow. On a fateful December evening in 1996, Lisa Redmond began her normal routine as a Pizza Hut delivery driver. It was a typical night, with Lisa's usual diligence and warm demeanor as she set out to fulfill deliveries. Little did anyone know, this ordinary work shift would take a devastating turn. Lisa's last known moments were at 9:45 p.m., when she left the Pizza Hut near 3100 South 5200 West to deliver an order to a nearby hotel. But as the hours passed, concerns grew when Lisa failed to return. Her absence raised alarms among colleagues and loved ones, prompting a frantic search. Lisa's truck would be discovered abandoned in a church parking lot just over a mile from where she would eventually be found. The grim discovery came shortly after, when her lifeless body would be found on the roadside near 5200 West 3100 South. She was still wearing her Pizza Hut uniform. The shock and grief echoed through the community as Lisa's family grappled with the loss of a beloved wife and mother. Following the discovery of Lisa's body, the West Valley City Police Department launched into action. Initial investigations centered around piecing together Lisa's final moments. Her colleagues at Pizza Hut provided crucial details, recounting the time she left the restaurant to deliver an order to a nearby hotel. The timeline was meticulously reconstructed, tracing her route and the critical minutes leading up to her disappearance. The investigation honed in on Lisa's abandoned truck, found eerily parked in a church parking lot not far from where her body was located. Inside the vehicle, detectives meticulously cataloged evidence of a struggle. A bloodied knife concealed behind the driver's seat and signs of a violent altercation inside the truck painted a grim picture of the events that would take Lisa's life. Evidence of blood underneath the truck suggested that Lisa had been run over. Forensic experts combed through the scene, collecting every shred of potential evidence. They documented bloodstains, scrutinized the vehicle for fingerprints, and gathered any trace that could shed light on who might have been responsible for Lisa's tragic demise. In the midst of the investigation, the community rallied together, offering tips and support to law enforcement in the hopes of bringing justice to Lisa Redmond and closure to her grieving family. But despite the initial flurry of activity and leads, the case soon grew cold, leaving investigators grasping for answers in a case that would haunt them for decades to come. Eventually, the case seemed to gradually slip into obscurity, but in 1999, just a few years after Lisa's brutal slaying, her family would be hit by another tragedy. Lisa's husband, James Redmond, lost his life in a car accident near Fort Collins, Colorado. The tragic loss of James reignited public interest in Lisa's unsolved slaying, prompting renewed efforts by authorities to seek justice for the Redmond family. During this period, the local media spotlight intensified, casting a new wave of attention on the case. Pizza Hut responded to the community's outcry by increasing the reward for information about the case. The initial reward of $5,000 was doubled to $10,000, encouraging witnesses to come forward with any overlooked details that could help in solving the mystery. But even with the renewed interest and occasional media coverage, leads grew stale. Witnesses moved away, and the case files gathered dust. The once promising investigation faded into a cold case for nearly 2 decades before a breakthrough would crack the case wide open. This turning point came in 2024 when forensic technology identified critical evidence linking a man named Donald Eugene Young Jr. to the crime scene. He was then charged for taking the life of Lisa Redmond. Specifically, DNA recovered from a seat belt buckle inside Lisa's truck was found to match Young's genetic profile. Investigators got Young's DNA back in 2002, but only questioned him in 2019. This discovery provided a link that had eluded investigators for years, breathing new life into the cold case. Fingerprints recovered from a knife found in the truck also matched those of Young, solidifying the connection between the suspect and the violent altercation that had resulted in Lisa's untimely demise. Young, already serving a 30 years to life sentence for unrelated crimes, including assault, emerged as the prime suspect in Lisa Redmond's case. His criminal history includes previous federal allegations for the slaying of 3 prostitutes in St. Louis, which were dismissed. Also a dismissed but still open case for the 1999 slaying of Amy Quinton at the University of Utah. This known history of violence and criminal activity across state lines added weight to the newly uncovered evidence in Lisa's case. It painted a clearer picture of the events that had transpired on that fateful December night in 1996. The West Valley Police Department, in collaboration with prosecutors from the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office, worked tirelessly to build a case against Young. They were aiming to finally bring closure to the Redmond family and deliver long-awaited justice. The revelation of Young's involvement brought a mix of emotions: relief for those who had tirelessly sought answers, and a reminder of the impact of violent crime on families and communities. As the legal process unfolded, the significance of the forensic breakthrough highlighted the way evolving technology can be used to resolve cold cases and hold perpetrators accountable, even decades after their crimes have been committed. In 1974, in the secluded woods of Ledyard, Connecticut, a chilling discovery would be made when two bodies were found in a shallow grave, their identities unknown. A woman, known only by her alias, would not be identified for nearly 5 decades. After years of mystery and questions about who this woman really was, advances in technology and relentless investigative pursuit were finally able to unveil her true identity. In the spring of 1974, on May 30th, Connecticut State Police received a cryptic tip that led them deep into the secluded woods behind a nondescript home on Shoeville Road. As they meticulously combed through the dense underbrush, their efforts were rewarded with a chilling discovery: a shallow grave carefully concealed beneath layers of fallen leaves and earth. Inside this makeshift tomb laid the remains of 2 individuals, their bones weathered by time and the elements. The man was quickly identified as Gustavus Lee Carmichael, a known serial bank robber who had previously escaped federal custody. But the woman's identity remained elusive. Investigators sifted through the clues found with her remains. She was dressed in a tan leather wet-look vest, a gold or tan sweater, a brown tweed skirt, and brown granny boots. Alongside these clothes were pieces of jewelry, including a pendant and rings. One ring had the letters JHSN monogrammed, the initials ILN, and the date 1917 engraved inside, while another ring was an inexpensive piece with a fake emerald stone. Despite these tangible clues, the woman's identity could not be found due to the extent of decomposition and her use of aliases. Investigators knew she had gone by the name Lorraine Stahl, but this alias and others she might have used did not yield any solid leads. The case grew cold over the years. In 2011, the woman's case data, dental x-rays, and a description were uploaded to the Name Us, and her DNA was submitted to CODIS in 2012, but no matches were found. In a renewed effort to solve the case, in July 2022, forensic evidence was sent to Hnath. Hnath developed a comprehensive DNA profile using forensic-grade genome sequencing. This advanced method allowed for more detailed analysis compared to previous efforts. In January 2024, Hnath's work led investigators to a potential relative of the unidentified woman. Confirmatory DNA testing connected the remains to Linda Sue Childers, born on September 4, 1946, from Louisville, Kentucky. Conversations with her family confirmed her presence in the Northeast in the years leading up to her disappearance. Linda's daughter provided a DNA sample, which conclusively identified the remains as those of Linda Sue Childers in February 2024. Little is known about Linda's early life, but by the time she reached her 20s, Linda's life had taken a tumultuous turn. She became involved with Gustavus Lee Carmichael, and under the name Lorraine Stahl went on the run with him in an attempt to evade law enforcement as they moved from place to place. In the late 1960s, Linda and Gustavus's criminal activities eventually led them to Ledyard, Connecticut. They robbed a New Jersey bank a few days before Christmas. Seeking refuge, they stayed at the home of Richard DeFreitas and his common-law wife, Joanne Ranello. During the time that Linda was at the DeFreitas' home, she expressed fears to Joanne about the life she was leading. She told her that she was nervous about using fictitious names and was afraid of being caught by the police and what she might say if she were apprehended. Tensions rose within the group, and on December 31, 1970, Linda and Gustavus's lives were brutally ended. DeFreitas and his accomplice Donald Brandt feared that Linda might reveal their criminal activities if apprehended, and decided to silence her. They were also bank robbers and thieves. Gustavus was also slain, as his protective nature made it impossible for the perpetrators to target Linda without eliminating him. After their untimely demise, Linda and Gustavus were buried in a shallow grave behind the house on Shoeville Road, where their remains would lie undiscovered for nearly 40 years. Joanne was the person who tipped off the police. DeFreitas and Brandt were subsequently convicted of the slayings, but both of them have since passed away. The identification of Linda Sue Childers brought long-awaited closure to her family, who had wondered about her fate for over 50 years. Her daughter and sister, informed of the discovery, were finally able to lay her to rest properly. Linda's story, though marked by tragedy, also serves as a reminder of the power of modern forensic science in solving even the most challenging cold cases. In the desolate expanse near the U.S. Highway 95 in rural Churchill County, Nevada, two passerby stumbled upon a gruesome discovery in May 2008. Skeletal remains partially buried in a shallow grave. For over a decade, the identity of the victim remained a mystery, her name unknown. It was not until a groundbreaking collaboration between forensic experts and cutting-edge genetic technology that the truth was revealed and a family would finally find closure. On a spring day in May 2008, two passers-by ventured off the beaten path, where they came across skeletal remains partially buried, covered with dirt and gravel. Nearby, an orange halter top lay abandoned. The Churchill County Sheriff's Office responded swiftly, launching an investigation into what could have happened. The remains were transported to the Washoe County Medical Examiner's Office, where a forensic pathologist determined that the victim was an adult female. She had passed away as a result of multiple gunshot wounds, an unmistakable slaying. Even with the best efforts of law enforcement and forensic experts, the case quickly grew cold. The details of the case were entered into NamUs under the identifier UP8110, a digital memorial to the unknown woman. Investigators scoured missing persons reports, compared dental records, and examined any potential leads, but each promising lead seemed to end in a halt. The orange halter top found near the remains, initially thought to be a crucial clue, provided no significant breakthroughs. Year after year, the file on the unidentified woman gathered dust. Investigators, driven by a commitment to justice and closure, never gave up hope. They continued to review the case periodically, hoping advancements in forensic science might eventually provide the answers they sought. They also hoped that someone, somewhere, might come forward with the crucial piece of information that would crack the case wide open. The unidentified woman's case was one of many waiting for the right combination of technology, expertise, and opportunity to bring her story to light. In 2023, after years of stagnation, the case of the unidentified woman from Churchill County took a shocking turn. The Washoe County Regional Medical Examiner's Office partnered with Othram, This collaboration would be the beginning of a new chapter in the investigation. Othram's scientists employed forensic-grade genome sequencing to develop a comprehensive DNA profile from the skeletal remains. This advanced technique allowed them to extract a high-quality DNA sample, even from degraded remains. The DNA profile was then compared against profiles in consumer genealogical databases with consent for law enforcement use. Although this type of analysis does not yield a direct identification, it generates powerful investigative leads by identifying potential relatives. The genetic genealogy search provided a promising lead that pointed to a potential relative of the unidentified woman. The examiner's office followed up on this lead, contacting the individual and explaining the situation. The potential relative agreed to provide a DNA sample for direct comparison. Using their advanced technology, Othram compared the DNA samples and confirmed a positive match. The unidentified woman was finally given a name in 2024, Betty Lou Japel. Betty Lou, who was 70 years old at the time of her untimely passing, had vanished under mysterious circumstances in 2006. Originally from McMinnville, Oregon, she and her longtime partner, Kenneth William Miller, had led a nomadic lifestyle, traveling in their motorhome and truck. She and Kenneth never married, but they had been together for about 30 years. Their travels took them to Quartzville, Arizona, where they were last seen. In mid-2006, their motorhome was found abandoned in a remote area near Redmond, Oregon, and their truck turned up in Montana. The last activity on their bank accounts was in June 2006, and they were last known to be in the company of a friend, Gregory Allen Groundhog Cole. Cole, a felon, was involved in a shootout with police in Quartzville in May 2007 and was later found lifeless from a self-inflicted gunshot wound near the Mexican border. In June 2007, Kenneth Miller's body was discovered in a shallow grave near the abandoned motorhome in Oregon, but there was no sign of Betty Lou. It is believed that Cole took the lives of Kenneth and Betty Lou. It was only through the relentless efforts of investigators and the innovative genetic genealogy that her remains, found 1,000 miles away in Nevada, were finally identified. The identification of Betty Lou Japel, achieved through advanced forensic techniques, brings closure to her family after years of questions and uncertainty.